Otis Ray Redding Jr. was an American singer and songwriter. He is regarded as one of the greatest singer-songwriters in the history of American popular music and a seminal artist in soul music and rhythm and blues. Nicknamed the King of Soul, Redding's style of singing gained inspiration from the gospel music that preceded the genre. His singing style influenced many other soul artists of the 1960s. During his career and posthumously, Redding won 2 Grammy Awards, a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award, Pioneer Award, and Otis Redding Excellence Award. He was induced to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Georgia Music Hall of Fame, Songwriters Hall of Fame, Hollywood's Rockwall, and the inaugural class of the Rhythm and Blues Music Hall of Fame. The United States Post Office issued a 29-cent commemorative postage stamp in his honor. Rolling Stones and Q ranked him as one of the greatest artists of all time. 5 of his albums have been ranked by Rolling Stone as one of the greatest of all time. In 2002, the city of Macon honored him by unveiling a memorial statue in the city's Gateway Park. The park is next to the Otis Redding Memorial Bridge. In 2007, Otis Redding's widow founded the Otis Redding Foundation in her husband's honor. Redding's music made him wealthy. He earned about $35,000 per week for his concerts. As the owner of Otis Redding Enterprises, his performances, music publishing ventures, and royalties from record sales earned him more than $1 million in 1967 alone. Redding owned a 300-acre ranch in Georgia, which he called the Big O Ranch, and founded a number of record labels. His early life. Redding was born in Dawson, Georgia, the 4th of 6 children and the first son of Otis Redding Sr. and Fannie Roseman. Redding Sr. was a sharecropper, then worked at Robins Air Force Base and occasionally preached in local churches. When Redding was 3, the family moved to Tyndall Heights. At an early age, he sang in the Vineville Baptist Church choir and learned guitar and piano. From age 10, Redding took drum and singing lessons. At Ballard Hudson High School, he sang in the school band. At age 15, Redding left school to help financially support his family. His father had contracted tuberculosis and was often hospitalized, leaving his mother as the family's primary income earner. He worked as a well digger, a gasoline station attendant, and occasionally as a musician. Redding's breakthrough came in 1958 on disc jockey Hamp Swain's The Teenage Party, a talent contest. Redding sang Little Richard's Heebie-Jeebies. The combination enabled Redding to win Swain's talent contest for 15 consecutive weeks. Redding was soon invited to replace Willie Jones as frontman of Pat T. Cake and the Mighty Panthers, featuring Johnny Jenkins. Redding was then hired by the Upsetters when Little Richard abandoned rock and roll in favor of gospel music. In mid-1960, Otis moved to Los Angeles. In Los Angeles, Redding recorded his first songs, including Tough Enough, She's All Right, I'm Getting Hip, and Gamma Llama. His personal life. At age 18, Redding met 17-year-old Zelma Atwood. 1 year later, she gave birth to their son Dexter in the summer of 1960 and married Redding in August 1961. In mid-1960, Otis moved to Los Angeles with his sister, Deborah, while Zelma and the children stayed in Macon, Georgia. Redding and his wife had 4 children, Dexter, Demetria, Carla, and Otis III. Death. By 1967, the band was traveling to performances in Redding's Beechcraft H-18 airplane. On December 9th, they appeared on the upbeat television show produced in Cleveland. Redding's next stop was Madison, Wisconsin. They were to play at the Factory nightclub. Although the weather was poor and despite warnings, the plane took off. For miles from their destination at Truax Field in Madison, pilot Richard Fraser radioed for permission to land. Shortly thereafter, the plane crashed into Lake Monona. The cause of the crash was never determined. Besides Redding, the other victims of the crash were 4 members of the Bar-Kays: Jimmy King, Phelan Jones, Ronnie Caldwell, and Carl Cunningham, their valet, Matthew Kelly, and the pilot Fraser. Redding's body was recovered the next day when the lake was searched. The service took place at the City Auditorium in Macon. Professional career. A member of Pat T. Cake and the Mighty Panthers, Redding toured the southern United States. Redding met Phil Walden, the future founder of the recording company Phil Walden and Associates, and later Bobby Smith, who ran the small label Confederate Records. He signed with Confederate and recorded a single together with his band Otis and the Shooters. Jim Stewart, studio chief of Stax Records, signed Redding and released These Arms of Mine with Hey Hey Baby on the B-side. The single became one of his most successful songs. His debut album Pain in My Heart was released on March 1964. The album debuted at number 103 on the Billboard 200. Most of Redding's songs from his first album had a slow tempo. Disc jockey Muho Williams accordingly labeled him Mr. Pitiful for his financial difficulties at the time. Redding's second studio album, The Great Otis Redding Sings Soul Ballads, was released in March 1965. Redding co-wrote I've Been Loving You Too Long with Jerry Butler, the former lead singer of The Impressions. The album, entitled Otis Blue, Otis Redding Sings Soul, was released in September 1965. Otis Blue also includes Redding's much-loved cover of A Change Is Gonna Come in 1965. Redding and Walden founded two production companies, Jody's Records and Red Wall Music, which was shut down shortly after its creation. In late 1966, Redding returned to the Stax studio and recorded several tracks, including Try a Little Tenderness, often considered his signature song. His next album, Complete and Unbelievable, The Otis Redding Dictionary of Soul, was critically and commercially successful. The spring of 1966 marked the first time that Stax booked concerts for its artists. Redding began touring Europe 6 months later. In March 1967, Stax released King and Queen, an album of duets between Redding and Carla Thomas, which became a certified gold record. Redding returned to Europe to perform at the Paris Olympia. The live album Otis Redding Live in Europe was released 3 months later. His decision to take his protege Conley instead of more established artists such as Rufus Thomas and William Bell produced negative reactions. In 1967, Redding performed at the influential Monterey Pop Festival as the closing act on Saturday night. Until that point, Redding was still performing mainly for black audiences, but after delivering one of the most electric performances of the night and having been the act to most involve the audience, his performance was therefore a natural progression from local to national acclaim, the decisive turning point in Otis Redding's career. Before Monterey, Redding wanted to record with Conley, but Stax was against the idea. The two moved to Macon to continue writing. The result was Sweet Soul Music, which peaked at number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. By that time, Redding had developed polyps on his larynx, which he tried to treat with tea and lemon or honey. He was hospitalized in September 1967 at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York to undergo surgery. In early December 1967, Redding again recorded at Stax. One new song was Sittin On, the Dock of the Bay. Redding was inspired by the Beatles' album Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band and tried to create a similar sound against the label's wishes. His wife Zelma disliked its atypical melody. The Stax crew were also dissatisfied with the new sound. However, Redding wanted to expand his musical style and thought it was his best song, correctly believing it would top the charts. Sittin On, the Dock of the Bay was released in January 1968. It became Redding's only single to reach number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and the first posthumous number 1 single in U.S. chart history. The album The Dock of the Bay was the first posthumous album to reach the top spot on the UK Albums Chart. Shortly after Redding's death, Atlantic Records, distributor of the Stax/Volt releases, was purchased by Warner Brothers. Stax was required to renegotiate its distribution deal and was surprised to learn that Atlantic actually owned the entire Stax/Volt catalog. Stax was unable to regain the rights to its recordings and severed its Atlantic relationship. In 2011, Kanye West and Jay-Z released Otis as a single off of their collaborative album Watch the Throne. Redding was credited as a feature on the song. The song was produced by West, who built it off of a sample of Redding's version of Try a Little Tenderness. Redding was an athletic family man who loved football and hunting. He was described as vigorous, trustworthy, full of fun, and a successful businessman. He was active in philanthropic projects. His keen interest in black youth led to plans for a summer camp for disadvantaged children. After his death, his wife, Mrs. Zelma Redding, continued his philanthropic efforts and established the Otis Redding Foundation in his honor. The foundation offers opportunities for youth to exercise their talents and expand their abilities. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and click on the bell icon for more content like this.